Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're diving into something that honestly feels like it belongs on a late night horror movie marathon, but it's actually rooted deeply in theology. We're talking about the unseen world. Specifically, we're going to unpack the surprising reality of how Catholics understand spiritual ghosts. It's literally the perfect question to kick things off. Does the Catholic Church actually believe in ghosts? I mean, when we hear that word, our minds immediately jump to the Hollywood version, right? Wandering souls, haunted houses, spirits looking for the light. Well, the church flatly rejects that cinematic version. But, and this is the big but, Catholic theology absolutely affirms a highly regulated, yet very, very real, invisible realm.
Section 1. Jesus and the Ghost. Let's look at the biblical account of walking on water.
Just look at the reaction of the disciples here. Picture the scene. It's the fourth watch of the night, visibility is practically zero in this crazy churning wind, and they see a figure approaching on the water. They are absolutely terrified. They scream that it's a ghost. But pay close attention to Jesus' response here. He doesn't correct their vocabulary. He doesn't say, "Hey guys, ghosts aren't real, calm down." He simply corrects their theological conclusion about his identity. He just says, "Take courage, it is I."
See, the disciples were using the underlying Greek word pneuma, which literally translates to spirit or spirit apparition. And you know what? Their initial confusion wasn't irrational at all. They were out there on the opaque, muddy waters of the Sea of Galilee, witnessing something that completely violated natural law. So Jesus wasn't denying that spiritual manifestations actually exist. He was just insisting on his own physical, embodied reality.
Section 2. The invisible realm. Let's talk about the supernatural order.
If you've been to Mass, you know Catholics recite these words every single Sunday. But that word invisible, well, it isn't just filler. It's actually making a massive, comprehensive theological claim about the sheer scope of divine creation. It's affirming a real supernatural order that exists right beyond our ordinary perception. And this invisible dimension, which by the way includes angels, demons, heaven, hell, and purgatory, is the absolute key to understanding how Catholics view spiritual ghosts. Now, this exact phrasing in the Creed, it was written specifically to combat ancient heresies, like dualism. Dualism falsely claimed that matter was inherently evil, or that some unseen realities somehow existed completely outside of God's creative power. So, by stating that God is the maker of the invisible, the Church is proving a crucial point. God is in complete, unyielding control of the whole shebang, the entire unseen realm.
Section 3. First century spirit beliefs. Here is the cultural context. Going back to the boat for a second, the apostles' fear was completely normal for their time. First century Jewish thought was full of intense tension on this stuff. On one hand, you had the Pharisees, who totally affirmed the existence of angels, spirits, and the resurrection of the dead. But on the other side, the Sadducees were hardcore skeptics. They rejected spirits and an afterlife entirely. So bringing up spectral concepts and having debates about disembodied spirits, that was just a very normal part of everyday folk belief and conversation back then.
And it wasn't just Jewish thought shaping their worldview either. The surrounding Hellenistic and Roman cultures were a huge influence. I mean, the Greeks had daemones, which were these spiritual beings heavily tied to tombs and dreams. Meanwhile, the Romans believed in Lares, ancestral guardians and spirits of the dead, and they'd even take food and drink to tombs. The apostles were constantly breathing in all of this swirling cultural tension.
Section 4. Catholic rules for ghosts. Let's look at Catholic Orthodoxy. Okay, so how do Catholics actually understand spiritual ghosts today? Well, Orthodoxy breaks it down into 4 key realities. First up, the human soul definitely survives bodily death. Second, the resurrection of the body is totally central to the faith. Third, and this is a big one, God can permit apparitions. It's not metaphysically impossible for God to let a deceased person appear or communicate in some extraordinary circumstance. But here's the 4th rule. The Church strictly rejects necromancy, meaning you absolutely cannot try to control or summon these spirits. No seances, folks. Because God can permit an apparition, the Church has some incredibly strict rules of discernment for evaluating these perceived encounters. Basically, they relentlessly look for a natural explanation first. We're talking misperception, the psychology of grief, or sleep phenomena. If, and only if, there is absolutely no material explanation, they'll start looking at other options. Is it a genuine apparition permitted by God? Is it a demonic deception, where an evil spirit is just playing dress up and imitating a human soul? Or is it simply a total fraud? Fascinatingly, this whole debate, it goes all the way back to the early church fathers.
Just look at the famous Old Testament account of King Saul using the witch of Endor to raise the spirit of the prophet Samuel. Guys like Justin and Origen, they believed God actually permitted Samuel's genuine spirit to appear. But then you have Tertullian and Jerome arguing that no, it was a demonic imposture. It perfectly highlights this deep, deep theological tension between divine permission and demonic deception.
Section 5, Avoiding the Occult. Let's discuss spiritual deception.
Now, the Catechism of the Catholic Church does not mince words on this topic. It tells us that seeking hidden knowledge or supernatural power through non-divine means is strictly forbidden. Any attempt to conjure the dead or magically unveil the future, that just reflects a very human desire to control the universe, and it completely cuts God out of the picture. Honestly, it's a direct violation of the first commandment.
And this grave warning is exactly why the Church draws such a hard line against things that modern society treats as, well, just harmless entertainment. Consulting horoscopes, palm reading, using mediums, practicing magic, or even just harboring an unhealthy obsession with demonic forces or horror, these are really not okay. They contradict the trust and reliance we owe to God alone, and worse, they can open up a person up to some serious spiritual deception.
To put this human tendency into perspective, think about this little anecdote from our source material. If someone told you they heard a choir of heavenly angels, and then in the very next breath mentioned they owned a haunted house, I guarantee you 9 out of 10 people would immediately ask, wait, tell me about the haunted house, right? As humans, we just have this weird, totally unhealthy curiosity with dark, supernatural things, and the Church is explicitly warning us to guard against that exact fascination.
Section 6. A truly mystical faith. It's all about trusting the Creator.
So what's the crucial takeaway from this explainer? It's that the Catholic faith is deeply, deeply mystical. So much of the world we inhabit is completely invisible and supernatural. But remember, God is entirely sovereign over it. If a spirit ever does appear, it isn't some glitch in the matrix or a violation of the soul's state. It is a strict exercise of divine permission. We are called to have a profound respect for the unseen, simply trusting that God alone gets to decide when and how the invisible world interacts with ours.
Which leaves us with a pretty compelling final thought to ponder. In a modern world that is practically obsessed with dark magic, horror, and the occult, are you ready to lay aside that unhealthy fascination? Are you ready to instead embrace the true, awe-inspiring mystery of the invisible realm, guided completely by faith and trust in the Creator?